Check this out. This is the same exact bass line written out in both tabs up top and music notation down the bottom. It's the exact same thing, just expressed in different ways. Which one is better, and most importantly, which one should you use when you're learning bass? Hi, I'm Luke from Become a Bassist, and in this video, we'll be diving into the pros and cons of both tabs and notation, and at the end of this lesson, I'll give you my verdict on which one you should use depending on your situation. Welcome to Become a Bassist, where it's all about no BS bass lessons designed to get you playing better bass, having more fun, and becoming the best bassist that you can be. And today we're diving into the disgusting, putrid waters of the tabs versus notation debate and figuring out which one, if any, you should learn. So let's put them head to head and see which one comes out on top. First criteria, ease. Are tabs or notation easier to get a handle on? Well, at the very start, this is basically no contest. Tabs are almost universally easier to get started with. If you took someone who had never seen any tabs or any notation, you get them to play like a beginner's song like Stand By Me, for example, the person using tabs, they'll almost certainly have an easier time. Why? Because with tabs, it's just the string and the fret number. It gives you everything you need to get started almost instantly. Using notation means you have to know a whole lot more. First of all, you need to know where the notes on your fretboard are. You need to know about clefs, key signatures, time signatures, accidentals, dynamic markings, all sorts of other stuff as well. So at the very start, tabs seem to be the winner. But are tabs actually easier in the long term? I actually don't think so, especially if you want to get a deeper understanding of music and want to play with other good musicians. Why is this? Because tabs have some pretty severe limitations. Namely, you have to essentially know how the song sounds before you start even trying to learn it. You can't just sight read tabs the way you can sight read sheet music. There's no rhythm in tabs, which makes it nearly impossible to decipher without repeated listenings of the song. If you showed up on a gig to play like a whole lot of songs that you don't know and all you had was tabs, you'd fall apart really, really quickly. But if you can read music, you'd be absolutely fine. In fact, I did this just yesterday. I showed up at a gig. There was just 2 books of charts, and they're just called charts, and away we go. No rehearsal or anything, and it's totally fine. So in terms of ease, tabs definitely have an edge getting started, but in the long term, I think notation kind of evens the score at least a little bit. So I'm going to call this one a draw. I'll await the virulent hate in the comments section. I'm looking forward to it. Next criteria though, quality and reliability. Are tabs higher quality and more reliable, or is it sheet music? This one's pretty easy. The winner goes to notation. Notation is generally more reliable than using tabs. Why is this? Because there are so many user-generated tabs that are frankly just really, really bad. Because the barrier for entry to using tabs is very low, it's kind of easy to get started, there's a tendency for people who don't have a lot of experience to create dodgy tabs. Now, not all of them. Some of them are really good, but a lot just aren't. And some of the authors of these tabs, they're even really aware of their own limitations. The author will put up like a disclaimer at the bottom of the tab. They'll say, I'm not sure this is right, but this is what I think it could be. And I think that's really cool. It's really honest, and I really appreciate that. But someone who has gone through the process of learning how to read notation, they're going to be, likely going to have a bit more experience than someone who just learned to use tabs. So the music reader in general, they're going to make things that are a bit more accurate. All right, next comes price. Now this is an easy win for tabs. There are so many tab sites out there completely free. They'll likely like bombard you with ads or be super aggressive about kind of getting you to download their apps, but they are free to use. Trying to find sheet music online though, especially if it's free, that's a different beast. There are a few really good public domain sheet music providers. The one I use the most is imslp.org, or you just search for the Petrucci Music Library. Actually, I'll put a link in the description as well, because they have tons of free sheet music that's all in the public domain. So, it is a lot of older music. If you're looking for something more modern in sheet music form, you'll usually have to pay for it. Sometimes you can just buy like a single song, other times you'll need to buy like an entire official songbook just for one thing. The point is though, that if price is what you're concerned with, tabs win hands down. Next category is time. Which one is quicker to learn. Again, this one's pretty easy, and it goes to tabs. I have a lesson on this channel that teaches you the basics of how to read bass tabs in less than 3.5 minutes. Now, obviously, there is more to it than just those 3.5 minutes, but you can get started really, really quickly. Reading music, though, that's going to take a lot longer than 3.5 minutes. A lot more time. Like I said before, there's a lot more that you need to know before you can actually get started. So in terms of time, tabs are a clean winner. Now here's a category you might not have expected: fun. I'm all about having fun when you're learning, and for most beginners, drudging through having to learn all the notes on the fretboard, all the notes on the staves, all the key signatures, time signatures, all the different possible combinations of rhythms and rests and all that stuff, it's probably not going to be fun on day one, right? But if you have tabs that tells you exactly where to put your fingers, that's all you need to be able to play your favorite songs. Tabs are going to be way more fun because it's just so easy to get started. So in the fun stakes, it's a solid win for tabs. Next category is universality. Basically, how easy is it to share your music with other people, other musicians, using tab or notation? Now this one is hands down a notation victory. Tabs are really only accessible to guitarists and bassists. If you gave tabs of a song to a piano player or a saxophonist, any instrument other than a guitar or a bass, they'd give you a weird look and say, the hell am I supposed to do with this? So, for example, when I was writing my album, I didn't write anything down in tabs at all. I wrote all that in notation, gave it to the other musicians, and we were ready to go. That just wouldn't have been possible with tabs. So the winner in this category, easy, notation for sure. Now there are a few hidden drawbacks of both notation and tabs, and they didn't really fit into any of the categories. The biggest drawback of using notation is that it hardly ever tells you where to play something. Check this out. Here's a bit of notation. It's just a plain old major scale in the key of A, right? But there are so many different ways you could play that on the bass. You could play it like this, the kind of common regular way. You could play 3 notes per string, like that. You could go up just 1 string. You could do something else. You could go a bit weird. You could go something like that. You could do a whole bunch of other things as well, but the notation will hardly ever explicitly spell this out. You kind of have to figure it out on the fly, or you just kind of end up playing yourself into a corner. Now tabs don't have this problem because where you put your fingers is pretty much all tabs will tell you. One hidden drawback of using tabs though is that it can severely hinder your ability to actually learn the language of music and your ability to communicate with other musicians. And this is a big reason why people who do read music look down on tab readers, because they don't have that ability to communicate, yeah? If all you're learning is fret numbers, then it's going to be hard to know what key you're playing in or even the notes that you're using. Now, you don't necessarily need to know these things. Plenty of great musicians didn't know that stuff and they were fine with it. But if you ever want to talk about music in terms people understand, it's going to be harder if all you know is tabs. For example, if you're trying to teach a piano player or a saxophonist or any other instrument a riff that you wrote so you can play that riff together, they probably won't understand, 3rd fret E string 2 times, 1st, 3rd, 4th, 3rd and 1st fret on the A string, then 3rd fret E string. But if you told them G, G, B flat C, D flat C, B flat G, then they'd probably understand a whole lot quicker. So with all that said, which one should you learn? Well, I can tell you my experience. I started off using tabs when I was playing, just in high school with my friends. I'd learned songs with a program called Power Tab Editor. I don't know if it's still around, but it was great. It served me really well for a good couple of years. Between tabs and figuring out songs by ear, I got everything done that I needed. I didn't really need to learn how to read notation, so I just kind of didn't. So if you're in a position like I was back then and you just want to play with friends and you don't need to learn to read sheet music, you don't need to learn to read sheet music. That's fine. You don't need to do anything that you don't want. Now, if you want to just kind of play with your buddies on the weekend or just play along with your favorite songs and there's tabs for those songs that you want to play, that's great. You don't need to learn to read sheet music. Like I said, there's always going to be someone who's insisting that you need to do things in a certain way, that you need to learn how to read, but that's fine. I disagree. You don't need to do anything in any way but your own, especially if you're not interested and if you don't need to learn to read notation. That's fine. For me though, After a few years of playing, I started playing with new people in new situations that were a bit more advanced, and I kind of needed to be able to learn to read. I started playing with big bands, playing jazz arrangements where bass lines were written out. And you know what? I sucked. I was so bad. Even when I understood the basics of how music notation worked, I still sucked at it, and it was a horrible time for me because I felt like I had just gone back to being a beginner again. And in a way, I absolutely had. I would have to show someone my music and ask, hey, how does this rhythm sound? How does this go? And then try and map the right notes onto that rhythm and figure out how it sounded before I could play it correctly. And it's embarrassing, I was asking these musicians who'd been, reading music since they were like 4 years old and getting them to sing me like really, really simple rhythms just so I can get through these basic charts. But even though it was hard and even though I sucked for a while, eventually I got the hang of it and now I'm a much more confident reader and I actually never use tabs at all anymore. Now I do create tabs for people so they can download them and all that stuff, but I can't remember the last time I needed to learn a song and went looking for tabs for it. Why not? Because as well as developing my reading skills, I also developed my ear, so it's a lot easier and faster for me to learn songs that way than it is to go to a tab site and try and find a reliable tab and then try and decipher it. My need for tabs has just kind of disappeared. So if your ultimate goal is to play music where people are reading music a lot of the time, I actually wouldn't worry about learning to read tab. Just go straight to learning notation. It will be a steeper learning curve, definitely, but it'll probably be worth it. So if you want to play classical music, you're going to need to learn to read. If you want to play in a jazz big band, you need to learn to read. If you want to do session work, join your school's concert band, do work with pickup bands, play in theatre productions, all that stuff, you'll need to learn to read. So you may as well just skip the tabs and go straight to the notation. Of course, you might be like me, where the kind of music you play changes over time, and your goals might change as well, and that's fine. It's not a case of either or. Sometimes it's a case of, yes, learn to read tab, and yes, learn to read notation as well. I play with a lot of people who don't know how to read music, and honestly, I don't give a shit if a person I'm making music with knows how to read music, or tabs, or both, or neither, because in the end, it doesn't really matter that much. All that matters is that you learn to make good music together. Whether you do that with tabs, notation, or just do everything by ear and don't learn either, that's totally fine. There is more than one way up the mountain. So don't worry about the naysayers who say that you have to do something in a certain way. Do what works for you and make the best music you possibly can. Of course, if you are a beginner and want to start learning tabs, I'd recommend checking out my video all about how to read and make sense of bass tabs right here. Like I said, you can learn the basics in just 3.5 minutes and be learning your favorite songs just a minute later. So if you're into learning about tabs, I'll see you in there.